If you've ever wondered what happens when the legend of Robin Hood collides headfirst with Mel Brooks's brand of fourth-wall-breaking humor, Robin Hood Men in Tights was born. While it was released in 1993, this parody didn't just poke fun at one version of the outlaw, it dragged decades of cinematic Sherwood Forests into a single chaotic party. Love it or roll your eyes at it, but this movie has details so strange they're worth exploring. And today, we're digging into 25 of the most insane ones. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Carrie Elwis thought Mel Brooks's casting call was a prank. When you're an actor fresh off The Princess Bride, people know your face. And then one day your phone rings. On the other end, someone says, "Hi, this is Mel Brooks." For Carrie Elwis, no, that doesn't sound like a dream. It sounds like someone messing with him. At that time, Brooks was already a Hollywood comedy legend, the kind of guy you'd expect to be way too busy to randomly cold call you. So Carrie assumed it had to be a prank, and he hung up. But Brooks didn't let it go. He actually called back and said, "No, seriously, it's me. I want you to play Robin Hood." Imagine having to convince someone that you're actually Mel Brooks. That alone feels like a scene straight out of one of his films. For Carrie, that second call changed everything, because he suddenly realized this wasn't some friend pulling a Jim Carrey impression. It's easy to see why Carrie was skeptical. I mean, he had to play Robin Hood himself. Back then, prank calls were a cultural pastime, and celebrity impersonations were a comedy bit everyone tried. Plus, Brooks's movies had such outrageous characters that his real voice probably didn't sound real. But after the confusion cleared, Elwis jumped in with both feet, and the rest is cult classic history. The story was co-written by a Hollywood dentist. Before Robin Hood Men in Tights even hit the screen, one of its earliest contributors was a Beverly Hills dentist. Evan Chandler spent his days working on veneers and root canals for high-profile clients. But apparently, between appointments, he was also dreaming up jokes about rabbis serving wine out of barrels. Chandler teamed up with writer J. David Shapiro to develop a script idea that would eventually land in Mel Brooks's hands. It's strange to picture a dental office somewhere in Los Angeles where, after cleaning a patient's teeth, Chandler might have been scribbling down scenes involving medieval slapstick. But that's Hollywood for you. Sometimes people with the most unexpected resumes end up shaping a major film. When Brooks got involved, he rewrote and restructured it, injecting his signature rhythm and rapid-fire humor. Still, Chandler's involvement is officially credited. It's rare for a mainstream comedy, especially one backed by a studio like 20th Century Fox, to include someone from outside the entertainment industry as a credited writer. That detail alone makes the film stand out. And Chandler wasn't just a name on paper. The core concept of spoofing multiple Robin Hood films, especially Prince of Thieves, traces back to that early draft. Shan Connory expressed interest in appearing in the film. Shan Connory had already cemented his status as Hollywood royalty long before Robin Hood Men in Tights came along. By the early 90s, he'd recently played King Richard in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, right in the final moments of the film. So when Mel began putting together his own parody of Robin Hood movies, Connory apparently showed interest in joining the chaos. According to multiple accounts, Connory even joked that he'd reprise his King Richard cameo, but with a Brooks twist. He suggested showing up in drag, completely undermining the heroic image audiences had from the Prince of Thieves. Imagine Shan Connory, the same man who once suavely ordered martinis, shaken, not stirred, now appearing in a medieval gown for a sight gag. It would have been a perfect Brooks moment. Only Connory's fee was too steep for the production's budget. Men in Tights had an estimated $20 million to work with, which sounds big until you consider that Connory's asking price for even a cameo could eat a serious chunk of that. Brooks, always practical despite his wild humor, decided to go another route and cast Patrick Stewart instead. Stewart's brief appearance as King Richard kept that joke intact, since a serious actor suddenly parachuted into this cartoonish world for one deadpan punchline. Even though Connory didn't make it into the final cut, the fact that he was interested at all says a lot about Brooks's pull in Hollywood. He could get a Bond legend to consider wearing tights, or, in this case, a dress. Dave Chappelle made his film debut as Achoo. Before Dave Chappelle became the comedy giant we know today, he was just starting out and looking for any break to get on screen. So his first taste of Hollywood came in this movie as a somewhat clueless but lovable sidekick, whose modern slang didn't exactly fit the medieval setting, but that was part of the joke. Elwis had pushed for Chappelle after seeing his talent, while Brooks was keen on bringing some fresh energy to the ensemble. It's almost like the duo saw a spark and wanted to light it up on screen. Chappelle's performance did absolutely pack a punch. Even in a film overflowing with slapstick and satire, Achoo stood out partly because of Chappelle's unique timing and partly because his modern sneakers made him the most anachronistic character in Sherwood Forest. There was a Robin Hood parody TV show. Back in 1975, like nearly 2 decades earlier, he created a short-lived TV series called When Things Were Rotten that put the Robin Hood story through the Brooks filter. Though it lasted just 1 season, the show set the stage for the kind of irreverent humor Brooks would bring to Men in Tights. When Things Were Rotten played fast and loose with the legend, packing in puns, slapstick, and caricatures, many of which felt like sketches out of a Brooks variety show. That early attempt at parody made Brooks and his team realize there was a rich vein of comedic potential in the Robin Hood mythos that hadn't yet been fully mined. Fast forward to 1993, and Men in Tights acts like a spiritual successor. It dials up the zaniness, sprinkles in meta-jokes about Hollywood itself, and embraces that cheeky, self-aware style that Mel Brooks fans adore. Many jokes, character dynamics, and even certain visual gags echo ideas first played with in When Things Were Rotten. Some outdoor scenes were filmed at Lake Sherwood, California. So when Mel decided to shoot the outdoor scenes for the Robin Hood movie, he picked Lake Sherwood in California. And no, not because it's some random nature spot. You see, back in 1938, Errol Flynn's The Adventures of Robin Hood used the same place to shoot some of its legendary forest scenes. So basically, Men in Tights was standing on the very same soil where Flynn's Robin Hood once swung from tree to tree, only now with a lot more silliness and a lot fewer perfect tights. Imagine Carrie Elwis walking around, sneakers hidden beneath tights, and Mel Brooks shouting directions, while ghosts of Hollywood's swashbuckling past probably laughed from the sidelines. Filming at Lake Sherwood was basically a cheeky wink to movie history, like saying, hey, we know you remember the classic stuff, but we're here to mess with it. It's the kind of detail only movie buffs might spot, but it adds an extra layer to the parody. The movie parodied both Kevin Costner's 1991 film and Errol Flynn's 1938 classic. Here's the beauty of Men in Tights. It throws a costume party for every version that's ever existed. You've got the dark, serious vibe of Kevin Costner's Prince of Thieves getting roasted left and right. Remember that infamous English accent controversy? Men in Tights makes a whole gag out of it, with Robin proudly declaring he can speak with an English accent, throwing shade with one quick line. But Mel didn't stop there. He also paid tribute, well, sort of, to the old-school charm of Errol Flynn's 1938 movie. That's why you see the flashy, swashbuckling moves and classic forest scenes. Brooks invited both versions to the same party, and gleefully pulled their pants down for laughs. This mashup works brilliantly because it pokes fun at the modern take on Robin Hood, while also tipping its hat to the romanticized Hollywood version. Mel Brooks played Rabbi Tuckman instead of Friar Tuck. Instead of the traditional Friar Tuck, Brooks created Rabbi Tuckman, which is a nod to his own Jewish heritage and his love for personalizing humor in his films. Rabbi Tuckman is a wise, witty spiritual advisor who dispenses both advice and wine with comedic flair. This switch was Brooks' way of saying, why not have a little fun with tradition by blending religious iconography with his own background? This role also showcases Brooks' style of humor that often includes self-referential and cultural jokes, making Rabbi Tuckman more than just a parody. So the next time you see him popping up on screen, remember, it's not just a cameo, it's his signature stamp. Can you guess how much it grossed? Here's the business side of Men in Tights. As I mentioned before, it cost roughly $20 million to make, a modest budget by Hollywood standards, especially for a comedy with sets and special effects. But what's impressive is that despite mixed reviews from critics, the film grossed about $72 million worldwide. That's showing that even if some reviewers weren't sold, audiences loved the goofy, irreverent humor Mel Brooks brought to the Robin Hood legend. In fact, this financial success helped cement the movie's place as a cult classic over time. That means the movie resonated with a wider audience who wanted to laugh at the absurdity of tights and one-liners. Madeline Kahn was offered the role of Latrine, but declined. Madeline Kahn always had an impeccable comedic timing, so it only makes sense that Mel Brooks wanted her for Men in Tights. She was originally offered the role of the sassy, sharp-tongued woman who runs the local outhouse and has an unforgettable flirtation with the Sheriff of Rottingham. But for reasons that remain a bit of Hollywood mystery, salary, negotiations, scheduling conflicts, or maybe Kahn just wasn't feeling the medieval vibe, she turned down the role. Now enter Tracey Ullman, who wasn't exactly a household name at the time, but brought a breath of fresh energy that perfectly suited Latrine's cheeky personality. Ullman improvised a lot during filming, especially the now iconic scene where the sheriff crashes through the roof and Latrine tries to seduce him. That moment wasn't scripted. It was pure Ullman magic that Brooks decided to keep. Though Kahn didn't end up in the movie, her association with the project adds a fun what-if layer. Imagine how different, or maybe even zanier, the character could have been. But Ullman's take became so memorable that it arguably stole the show in the comedy department. Can you guess the music composer? When you think about the music in Robin Hood, it's impossible to separate the laughs from the lyrics. And that's because Mel actually penned every single original song lyric in the movie. From the raucous Men in Tights theme to the rap battle-style Sherwood Forests jam, Brooks put his comedic stamp on every verse. His knack for wordplay shines through, with clever puns and ridiculous rhymes that fit perfectly within the medieval meets modern vibe of the film. Even Maid Marian's silly song is Brooks's handiwork. Working alongside composer Hummy Man, Brooks ensured the music was a way to push the jokes further and keep the energy high. It's a great example of how deeply involved Brooks was in personally shaping every aspect of the movie's tone. Actors attended a sword-fighting boot camp. Even in a movie known for its zany humor and slapstick gags, some things demand serious preparation, something like sword fighting. Mel might have been all about the laughs, but he understood that convincing swashbuckling scenes still need skillful choreography. That's why the entire cast of Robin Hood went through an intense sword-fighting boot camp before cameras started rolling. The instructor was a fencing coordinator with a legacy stretching back decades. Victor Paul, the very same expert who helped choreograph fights for the classic 1938 Adventures of Robin Hood starring Errol Flynn. Now, I can't stop imagining stepping into your tights and practicing swordplay under the guidance of the guy who shaped some of the most iconic Robin Hood duels in film history. Talk about a connection to the past. Victor Paul's job was to make sure the fights looked authentic while fitting the comedic tone. I mean, too serious and the comedy wouldn't land. Too goofy and the fights would lose any sense of realism. The actors learned everything from basic sword grips to complex choreographed sequences. All that designed to be executed safely. What's even cooler is that the cast included folks who weren't trained fighters, so it took a lot of sweat and patience. But the results are fight scenes that look legit enough to hold your attention, yet also funny enough to keep you chuckling. When you hit the bullseye. When watching Men in Tights, you might laugh at the ridiculous moments, but the archery scenes have some genuine flair, thanks to Carrie Elwis. His portrayal of Robin Hood means he had to pull off those signature bow and arrow shots. And guess what? The perfect bullseye you see on screen wasn't fake. It was Elwis nailing a real shot. Despite all the silliness, Mel gave Elwis exactly 3 tries to hit the mark. That, my friends, is some tremendous pressure when the cameras are rolling and the crew knowing that this one shot might be the only real thing in the whole scene. Elwis took the challenge seriously. The first 2 arrows came close, but missed the bullseye. On the 3rd attempt, though, the arrow landed exactly where it was supposed to. I mean, what do you think? Elwis had trained for the role, working to bring authenticity to his character beyond the jokes and antics. This scene ended up in the final cut, a rare but real achievement amidst the sea of comedy. I don't know about you, but if I hit a bullseye on camera, I'd brag my way to the grave. Richard Lewis was sick. Man, it would have been hard to deliver punches when your body is battling 106 Fahrenheit fever. That was the reality for Richard Lewis during part of the filming. He played Prince John, that demanded impeccable timing. But behind the scenes, he was facing hepatitis A. Hepatitis A isn't something you can just power through easily. It attacks your liver and often leaves you exhausted and weak. Most people would be in bed, sweating and miserable, but Lewis kept showing up to set to deliver his scenes. It's a testament to his professionalism, really. Little did anyone realize that he was battling something serious while his mouth delivered snarky insults. That mix of discomfort and humor adds an unspoken layer to his performance. Maybe that slight haze in his eyes or the way he occasionally catches his breath wasn't just acting. This behind-the-scenes struggle doesn't take away from the laughs. If anything, it makes Lewis's commitment even more impressive. Gene Siskel listed it as one of the worst films of 1993. Not everyone was on board with Robin Hood when it came out. Gene Siskel, one of America's most influential film critics at the time, did not hold back his disdain. In his year-end roundup, he ranked the movie among the worst films of 1993. Now, even though Siskel was known for his sharp opinions, Men in Tights was hit way below the belt. Critics like him saw the film as a lowbrow comedy that relied too heavily on slapstick and pop culture references that didn't always land. The parody style, while beloved by some, rubbed others the wrong way, coming across as lazy. Let's be honest, slapstick style has its own edge and might sometimes sound stupid, but that's the way it works when you're in the mood to watch something silly, some mindless comedy. Perhaps that's why it works. Because it's so ridiculously funny. Despite that critical cold shoulder, the movie found its audience. Over time, Men in Tights developed a cult following. Fans appreciated its goofy charm with rapid-fire jokes. It became one of those so-bad-it's-good gems that audiences returned to for comfort laughs, especially for those who love parodies and absurdist comedy. Siskel's dismissal didn't kill the movie's spirit. Because, sometimes the harshest critics can't predict what audiences will embrace years later. Tracey Ullman improvised the "I touched it" line. One of the most memorable gut-busting moments in the movie came purely from Tracey Ullman's sharp instincts. An impromptu line that wasn't even in the script. In the scene where the sheriff of Rottingham crashes spectacularly through Latrine's roof, Ullman drops the line, "I touched it." That little phrase sent the whole crew into stitches and has since become one of the movie's signature quotes. What makes this even cooler is how perfectly timed and natural Ullman's delivery is, which is why Mel decided to keep it. This tells you a lot about Brookss's directing style. While he is known for his meticulous scripting, he's not afraid to let talented actors play off the moment when something genuinely funny happens. Improvisation like this is a risky business. Sometimes it falls flat. Sometimes it creates magic. This unscripted gem perfectly illustrates why good comedy often depends on spontaneity and chemistry between actors. It reminds us that even in a movie filled with pre-planned jokes and parody, the best laughs can come from moments no one planned. Just genuine, off-the-cuff brilliance. And Tracey Ullman, she nailed it. The movie references earlier Brooks films. This movie isn't just a parody of other Robin Hood movies, it's a loving compilation of Brooks's comedic history, and man is it packed with his previous references. He wanted to remind audiences why his unique brand of humor has been legendary for decades. Take the "walk this way" gag, for instance. This joke originally made waves in Young Frankenstein when characters mimicked footsteps in a hilarious way. Brooks recycled it here, needless to say, quite seamlessly. It's like he's tipping his hat to loyal fans who followed his career. Another standout callback is the hanging scene reminiscent of Blazing Saddles, where Brooks combined slapstick and sharp wit to mock Western cliches. In Men in Tights, the tone and timing of that scene echo the original. These references are more than Easter eggs. They create a shared universe of comedy that defines Brooks's style. Dom DeLuise's son appears in a cameo. Dom DeLuise famously played the gluttonous Sheriff of Rottingham in the film, but he wasn't the only DeLuise in the mix. His son, David Deouises, made a small appearance as an uncredited villager in the film. It's one of those fun family moments that you might miss if you're not looking closely. David's cameo might be tucked away in the crowd scenes, but it's a neat little Easter egg. It's always interesting to see how Hollywood families sometimes share the screen, even in subtle ways. Dom's larger-than-life personality dominated the film, but his son's cameo adds a touch of genuine spirit to the production. The famous English accent joke was intentional. One of the most talked about jokes in Robin Hood is when Carrie Elwis's Robin Hood suddenly declares, "Unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent." This line is more than just a funny throwaway. It's more of a deliberate jab at Kevin Costner's 1991 Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Costner's thick, unmistakably American accent in the serious-toned film sparked plenty of buzz and even criticism, because Robin Hood is, well, English. Mel Brooks knew this perfectly and used it as ammunition. The joke lands perfectly with audiences familiar with Costner's version, and therefore instantly connecting the parody to its source material. This meta-humor isn't just about mocking accents. It's a way for Brooks to comment on Hollywood itself. So every time Robin Hood flashes that accent line, it's a cheeky wink from Brooks, inviting viewers to laugh not just at the character, but at the very idea of movie making itself. Hidden Easter eggs include literal visual puns. One of the sneakiest joys in the Robin Hood movies, especially this version, is the treasure trove of hidden Easter eggs that add an extra layer of cheeky humor. We're not just talking the blink and you'll miss it background jokes. There are literal visual puns that practically demand a double take. Take Latrine's infamous magic pill, for example. What is it really? A lifesaver candy. Yep, a lifesaver disguised as a medieval remedy, because who doesn't need a little sweet salvation after dealing with, well, latrine? It's a brilliant visual joke that plays on the word lifesaver. And then there's the Sheriff of Nottingham, who's decked out with not one, but multiple badges. Well, he's trying way too hard to look official and intimidating, but it ends up making him look more like a clueless hall monitor. That over-the-top badge display is a subtle roast of authority figures everywhere who confuse quantity with quality. Finally, Achu rocks sneakers under his medieval garb. That choice adds to the absurdity of the whole movie's vibe. Historical nonsense mixed with modern-day humor. Richard Lewis had a horse phobia and refused to ride one. Now our neurotic Prince John had a serious phobia of horses. Considering the guy had to portray a royal ruler in a medieval setting, to be terrified of the very animal that dominates that world is freaking funny. Lewis was so adamant about avoiding horse riding that he reportedly wouldn't even go near one during filming. But then our clever director stepped in with a guarantee of no horse riding for you. That promise was enough for Lewis to sign on. And honestly, it worked out perfectly, because Prince John isn't exactly the type you imagine galloping heroically through Sherwood Forest. He's more the awkward, bumbling type, so no horses needed. Now, when you watch it again, I guess you'd pay more attention to the character, knowing Lewis had some irrational fears while playing Prince John. And when you see him stumbling across the castle or whining about his crown, just remember, the only horses he wanted were the ones far, far away. The guards falling gag took weeks to plan. That legendary scene where the guards keep toppling over like a perfectly timed human domino chain looks effortless on screen, but don't be fooled. This ballet took weeks of careful planning. Picture the choreographer and stunt team wrangling a bunch of actors, timing each fall to the millisecond, and making sure no one actually got hurt while doing their best impression of drunken trees. It was like directing a slapstick dance where every tumble had to be synced just right for the gag to land perfectly. One false move, and the whole domino effect would collapse prematurely. Weeks of rehearsals were necessary to capture that rhythm where the falls cascade in seamless succession. So next time you watch those guards tumble like a row of comedic dominoes, tip your hat to the dedication it took to make that chaos look so perfectly controlled. International dubbed versions tweaked the English accent joke. The classic English accent joke about Kevin Costner in Robin Hood didn't just stay put in the English version, it got a whole new spin across the globe. Different countries put their own local flavor on the gag, turning it into kind of an international inside joke. For example, in the German dub, instead of mocking the accent, the joke went meta, joking about Costner literally costing producers $5 million. These Hollywood budgets, you see. Meanwhile, in French and Italian versions, the joke tied into Dances with Wolves, a Costner classic, so basically playing on his star persona rather than just his accent. Then there's the Hungarian dub, which took a turn by having Costner claim he has a shapely bottom. You see, localization isn't just about translating words, but also adapting jokes to fit local humor and cultural references. It's like the filmmakers gave the translators a wink and said, "Have fun with this one." So depending on where you watch Robin Hood, you might catch a different punchline entirely. Marvelous verdict. So let's pass the marvelous verdict. This was an absurdly wonderful movie. Whether it's hidden visual puns or epic sword fighting training linking back to Hollywood's golden age, Robin Hood movies prove there's always more than meets the eye. Now it's your turn. Please let us know what's your favorite Robin Hood moment in the comments section below. And hey, if you loved uncovering these behind-the-scenes gems, don't forget to like and subscribe for more quirky movie deep dives coming your way. Thanks for watching, and may your aim always be both with arrows and trivia.